Paul. Welcome to This Is Horror.
Well, thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, it's been a long time coming. We have been fans of Thunderstorm Book for a good while now. And I thought to begin with, let's talk a little bit, go all the way back to your early life. I want to know what were some of the life lessons that you learned growing up.
Oh, okay. This is a new question for me because it usually starts either when I started getting into books or when I started the press. Um, I grew up in rural Minnesota, like nobody around, just some farms, that sort of thing, and my dad was a civil engineer and he worked for the government, so we moved around a lot. But Minnesota's kind of ended up staying there for a good period of time. So my early elementary school years, I went there. So I basically got into books when I was a kid. I broke my leg playing football, and it was a really bad break. I had to have a couple surgeries. I was in a cast for 9 months, so I kind of got into books and reading in around fourth grade, and so I spent a lot of time reading, Choose Your Own Adventures and The Three Investigators and those sort of things, Hardy Boys, that sort of stuff. So then I got into, starting to buy those type of things. I was kind of even collecting them for a little bit. And that's kind of how I got into reading originally.
It sounds like you did like a Tom Passmore, from Mystery, Peter Straub's Mystery. Broke your leg, you get laid up for nine months. Well,
Right.
You're going to read, or you're going to become friends with your neighbor who happens to be the Shadow. So
Right. Yeah, because the TV had 3 stations on it, and there's not a lot during the day, So so that's how it started, and that got me into reading, and then I kind of drifted away from it after I started like high school and stuff like that. And then when I was in college, I was mostly reading for school, so that reading for pleasure type thing kind of went away for a while. And what happened is I was in a line at a supermarket, and I think I was mid to late 20s. So I mean, and Stephen King's The Green Mile Part 1, The Two Dead Girls came out. If you remember, they originally came out once a month, and they were like 1 through 6, and I saw that number 1 on it and that green cover, and I just picked it up on a whim because, like I said, it just reminded me of the books I read as a kid, kind of just the way it looked. I'm like, oh, they're numbered and this and that, and so I just picked a complete whim, and it was just, I was in the line, I saw it, and I popped it in the cart, and then that really got me on the road to where I am today, because then I loved it, and then I'm reading all this stuff, and then I'm started buying this hardcovers, and then starting going after first editions, and then I got introduced to the small press stuff, and it just kept growing and growing and growing from there.
So The Green Mile was the first book that really got you into horror, it sounds like. But I mean, in terms of really, I suppose, opening your appetite to collecting books and limited editions, was there a particular title that got you into that?
So what happened was, like I said, I was reading Stephen King, and I was kind of going backwards. So I was like, going through the 90s, and I'm going into the 80s. I was working way backwards because I was kind of, trying to buy first editions, and as you go back, they got more expensive. So there was a gentleman that I worked with who was a huge Stephen King fan. And so every time I was reading one, I would talked to him about it, and he knew the characters. He knew it. It's like he read them all multiple times type person. And he tells me, hey, you know who Stephen King's favorite author is? And I'm like, I have no idea. Right. And he goes, it's a guy named Jack Ketchum. And he wrote this book called The Girl Next Door. And he goes, I will lend you my copy of The Girl Next Door. But it was the small press lettered edition of it is the one he had. And I'm like, at the time, my daughters were toddlers, or my oldest daughter was a toddler. And I'm like, no way. I don't want to borrow something like that. Let me kind of just check it out and I'll look into it. So I went online and looked around in it. And the first limited edition I ever bought was Jack Ketchum's The Lost. That was put out by Cemetery Dance. So that was my first ever limited edition. And I read that book and I loved that book. And then, then I started buying more and more limited editions. And that, started buying early Edward Lee stuff and Jack Ketchum. I bought all his stuff. And that really got the ball rolling in the specialty press market. And then eventually I went and bought my own copy of The Girl Next Door, and that was good too. I like that book. Like is a hard word to use. It's a very good book, but it's hard to quote unquote like it. But those early, you kind of discover something and you want to keep going, and then you want to buy his next one or his previous one, and it kind of just grew from there.
Yeah, to go from Stephen King to Jack Ketchum and then to jump to Edward Lee. It's a hell of a kind of horror education. And I think all of us who have read The Girl Next Door, we remember our first time because, boy, oh boy, it messes you up. It was
Yes.
I think it was the first book where I really just felt this palpable dread and wanting to reach into the book and help, the titular girl, but you can't do anything. And then in your reading, you're almost becoming complicit. You're becoming part of it. And wow, what a harrowing experience. As you say, to say you like it, it's difficult, but to say it's one of the most effective books, absolutely.
Yeah, I was like, after I was done reading it, I was numb for like a week. I didn't want to read anything for a good solid week. And it was like, it's just this numbing effect on you. And I've only read it once. I don't know if I'll ever go back and read it. I don't know. But yeah, definitely. And then when you mentioned Edward Lee's, when I read City Infernal was the first Edward Lee I ever read. And when I read that, I'm like, and it ended up not being true, but when I read it, I'm like, I'll never find something like this in a bookstore. It was so out there and different than the stuff, that you see on the Barnes and Noble shelves. So I was like, wow, there's another world where the writing has a lot less limits to it, put it that way. So.
And what was the step or the impetus from you to go from being a voracious book collector to deciding, actually, I want to establish my own press, putting out limited editions with Thunderstorm Books?
Yeah, so that's kind of interesting. So what happened was, I was buying a lot of limited editions. I was addicted to them. I was just anything new coming out. I was not anything, but I was a serious book collector for several years. And there was a company down in Australia. I don't know if you guys remember this, but this is early 2000s. Maybe mid 2000s. Anyway, there's a company down in Australia called Wild Roses Press. And they were doing a 6-book limited edition of up and coming authors, and they were all illustrated by Keith Minion, and they just looked fabulous. So I went out, and the first 2 books were released. I went out and bought the first 2, which was, Rage by Steve Gerlach and The Last Motel by Brett McMean. And I paid a probably double or triple, price for them, but I had to have them. And then I pre-ordered book 6, which was just announced back on the Shocklines days, if you guys remember those days. And book 5 was supposed to be The Wicked by James Newman. And I read somewhere where he's like, well, maybe this isn't going to come out. And I was like, how is this not going to come out? I need this, And I was like, it really bummed me out. And I was like, and the Wicked cover art was just magnificent. And I was standing in my bathroom, and I was looking at the mirror, and I don't generally talk to myself in the mirror. But this morning I go, why couldn't I put it out? What? And then I kind of thought about it. Like, what would be stopping me from trying this out? And I didn't immediately hop on the, I didn't go email James, and I didn't go. What I did is I really started researching, the book publishers that were publishing in that day, what worked, what didn't work from my own experiences. I was taking a lot of notes. I was, kind of going old school research on it. Like, what do I need to do to set this up and be a publisher? And one of the people that helped me out the most when I was first starting was Don Koch, who was Necessary Evil Press, and he was the one that ended up publishing The Wicked by James Newman, by the way. So that had already occurred, but he helped me out a lot with some of the numbers and what to expect, some of the downfalls, that sort of thing, and kind of set me up for what I wanted to do and what I wanted to bring to the table, and it kind of got me to the level where I thought, okay, I can make this work. I had enough information at that time. I thought, okay, this is something I think I can pursue.
And so, prior to your conversation with Don, did you have any kind of background in publishing or books from your professional life? I'm wondering if there was an overlap between what must have been the day job at the time and then venturing into Thunderstorm Books.
Right, and that's an excellent question, because I've actually I've had a day job of some sort since the beginning of doing this. So, but at the time when I was considering doing it, I was a mid-level manager at a manufacturing site. So a lot of what goes into a book, especially the hardcover type books, is basic project management that I had used in my professional life. It was just, the application was a little bit different. That's basically it. But basic project management is the exact same thing. Because I didn't have a book background other than being a book collector. So I had a book collector background. I had project management background. I was pretty good at business. I took business courses in high school and some in college. I ended up getting a degree in mathematics, so the numbers always made sense to me. But like from a pure book, I'm, editor, that sort of background, I was a fish out of water.
And so then when you made the jump and you decided, okay, this is what you're doing, what kind of things did you put in place or set up for yourself? Did you have a number of books that you wanted at the time to put out per year? Did you have some rules in terms of, okay, I absolutely won't do this? What went into those early years?
That's another excellent question. The first thing I did was I sat down and thought about the reasons I wanted to do this and what was important for me. And I don't know if a lot of people actually really do that and have an honest conversation with their own. You probably think I'm a guy who talks to mirrors and talks to himself a lot. He's probably a psycho, but it's you have to. If you're in, I was in it to make extra money. It was an additional income source. Was the reason I was getting into it. So that aspect was very important. But the other thing that I really thought about is, how am I going to land this plane? If I take off in this plane tomorrow, how am I going to land in it? So there were a few rules I made for myself. Is I'm not going to screw anybody else out of money. If this fails, it's 100% on me, and it comes out of whatever money I have. That I'm not, and that one was very important to me. I wanted to, if I ever stopped or wanted to stop, I wanted to stop and go out in style, go out on top. I don't know what you want to call it. I didn't want to do something terribly stupid and then, fail. I didn't want to fail, put it that way. So having those things in my head when I started made a lot of my decision-making process in the early years a lot more focused, so that I wouldn't make some mistakes that I saw other presses making. And one of the big ones, especially at the time, I don't know if you guys remember the early 2000s, but presses were booming in the early 2000s, so much so that presses were buying up all these books and then never publishing them. They would buy up their queue for 2 years worth of publications and then struggle to come out with a book. And the reason for that is getting the initial contract and even getting the artwork and some of that initial stuff started isn't the most expensive part of the process. It's those printer bills. It's those binding bills that's the biggest part of the pie, so to speak. So unless you're prepared for that, it's kind of, I don't want to say easier, but it's like, I'm not ready for this one to go to print. I'm going to go, sign another author. And then, I don't know. So I tried to limit myself, and I said I set myself up as a limit as 2. I was going to start with, I'll start with 2, and I'm not going to take on any more. And then I broke my own rule and ended up with 3. So I started with, my first initial contact was with Brian Smith with House of Blood. And then I was with Brett McBean, and we were going back and forth between The Mother and his short story collection that we ended up doing, Tales of Sin and Madness. And then I brought in and did Nate Southard's chapbook, Just Like Hell, after I started going down the road on those 2. And then thankfully, I would have even broke it probably more, but the 4th author I was thinking about said no. So I'm like, that was probably a blessing in disguise. I won't mention names, but I'm like, that was probably a good thing, because I was starting to go down the road that I said I wasn't going to. But after Just Like Hell came out, then things started to go a lot smoother.
And of course, slowly, or not even that slowly, over the years, you have built up so that you're now putting out about 40 titles per year. And I mean, I wonder what would be perhaps some of the moments or the milestones that meant that, okay, we can scale it a bit, we can scale it a bit? How did you decide, let's take it to the next level, you know, without, I suppose, going out in a bad way, as it were? How did you make a calculated risk, but make sure that it was one that you could handle?
Yeah, and that's very important. And when you mentioned early on, I didn't have these goals of I'm going to do X amount a year. Like 2008, I only did one book, and that was Just Like Hell, and that was a chapbook. And I'm known for hardcovers, and it actually first came out as a paperback chapbook. And so then in 2009, I did 5, and then in 2010, I did 10. And then when 2010, Brian Keene and I did the first Maelstrom set. And that was a huge turning point for me because that was the first time I took money from the press and applied it to stuff in my personal life. Because everything else I was just reinvesting. So I was just reinvesting into the business. And so, so 2011, I spent, I made a large jump between 10, which was still kind of a lot. I mean, it's not nothing. 10 up to 20-ish. And that jump or that expansion, that took a lot, kind of I don't want to say a lot out of me, but it kind of put me into the thing of like, okay, this is going to be everyday life now. These numbers are going to be where you're really doing this. And I kind of felt comfortable in that. One of the, I don't want to say a trick, but one of the things that what worked for me, and it maybe is different than other publishers, I think it is I was taking very, very small print runs, making a little bit of money on them, and then doing that on a lot of books. So, there's some advantages to that. One is I get to work with a wide range of authors, new authors that haven't had limited editions, where the expectations aren't so high that there's either pressure on me or them that might not be attainable. So, and then I was able to do that kind of over and over and over again. I don't want to say a template, but I kind of did have the setup of this is how many copies we'll do. And then I just repeated that the next month with the next worth. So it kind of allowed me to experience a lot of different authors, a lot of different artists, and it felt my speed. It felt where I was most comfortable. Now that was in the mid. Well, by then it's 2011, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16 were kind of really structured years where it was kind of, I was making the same amount of money per year. I wasn't getting rich. Don't get me wrong, but I was successful enough. It was a little bit extra money every month, that sort of thing. And then in 2017, I was just a great year for me. And I'm like, wow, I don't sitting here talking to you, I don't really know how I got to 40. All of a sudden I'm in the mid 20s, maybe cracking 30, and now I'm up towards 40. And it was weird because I was just talking to my wife, and I don't want to jump way ahead, but I was talking to my wife today, and I'm like, I'm getting older. I don't know. I don't know if I have the stamina for doing this many anymore. I might have to seriously think about, it's tougher than it looks. I guess I should put it that way. But mixing in your day job with I used to be able to come home from my day job. For instance, I work a 10-hour shift. I could put 4 hours into books easy, like 4 or 5 hours a night. No problem. And now I work a 10-hour shift, and it's like, man, I'm exhausted. I do most of my publishing stuff now on the weekends. So anyway, I'm sorry I jumped way ahead, but yeah. But the basic answer to that question was make a little bit of money on a lot of different books. That kind of was my formula, and it worked for so long. It was like I didn't want to change it. I mean, why change? Why fix what's not broken? So.
Yeah, and on This Is Horror, we're always jumping ahead, jumping back, jumping in a direction that we didn't expect. So don't you worry about that. And I mean, it is interesting actually to jump all the way ahead because I mean, from the way you're talking as well, so you still have a day job and you're putting out about 40 books per year. This is incredible. This is
Yeah,
borderline insanity.
yeah. I've going to various conventions and whatnot when I'm talking to. I really enjoy talking to other publishers because it's just like you're talking to someone who has the same experiences, and a lot of us are sleep deprived. I don't know, but I've actually picked up a couple tips. When I was at, it was one of the Scares That Cares. The Apex publisher, I think she's co-publisher, Leslie. Man, I should know the name. Connor. Man, maybe.
I know exactly who you mean. Yeah.
Yeah. She mentioned that at their press they don't work in December. Like they will. It's like a time of, hey, we're back in January type thing. And I always thought that was an awesome idea. I've tried it a couple of times and then I end up, but it's in my head to try to actually, scale back. And I do scale back in December. Decembers are really tough months for me anyway. So, and then, just that balance of just remembering, to what's important, right? I mean, families are important, spending time, other hobbies. I mean, if I love books, but if you don't have other things going on, it can be a little bit overwhelming. Too much of a good thing, even. I mean, and then just having that balance has been pretty important, I think. So that's words of wisdom. If anybody wants to get into this sort of thing, is just remember it's not a race. I mean, it's okay to take your time and do things right and make sure you have everything set.
And I think it would be interesting too to talk a little bit about what it looks like from commissioning a book, deciding, okay, you're going to put the limited edition out, to it then actually being available and on the shelves. What are all the processes from commissioning the cover art to anything in terms of marketing or editorially? I mean, I'm wondering too, just logistically, how are you doing all these things to put out 40 books per year? But I understand too that because these editions that have previously been published most of the time, then it's going to vary a little bit. It's going to be different to say what a kind of more traditional or a paperback only publisher would be doing.
Right, and that's a very good point. When I first started, it was hardcovers first. Hardcovers are, I don't want to say the word most important, but it's hardcovers first, paperbacks came later, and then that switched. And for the most part, paperbacks actually come out first now. I mean, I would say maybe 90% of the time that's true. So, so for that example, or for to answer your question, starting off, it's like, okay, there isn't going to be a ton of editorial things, right? If the paperback already exists and the paperback's already successful, I'm not going to go in and say, hey, change this character to make him do this instead of this, because then it's not the same book. So on that front, it's a lot easier. And I wouldn't even say that's not really my forte anyway. There have been books that I have been, had input in, and we've made changes, and some of them more drastic than others. But in those occurrences, they were originals, so they weren't the paperback first. So in a way, that makes it a little bit easier. Then, I have a really good bunch of editors that really help me out a lot, and so I trust them. With what they think with books too. So it's not just me deciding everything. It's kind of a team effort. So what I look for is, what's the concept? How popular it is. I even look at what other publishers are what's the paperback company that publishes it? There are certain ones that I like a lot of their stuff. So it's more, I pay attention to that. I pay attention to how the authors are online, how they're interacting with people, how their book sales look like they're going. And I know I'm an outsider looking in, but those are the kind of things that I'm looking at when somebody announces something, or they are putting a word out about a book. How are people reacting? And then I also bring in my collector experience type thing of like, hey, as a collector, do I think people would be interested in, this book, and whatever book I'm, thinking about. And it does, I don't, I'm not trying to separate. I think there's a ton of great publishers out there, but it does allow for, at least Thunderstorm, it allows for getting new voices in the mix, where it's not just the top 10 authors in the world, and then if you're in number 11, we don't have room. So I do, that's one of the things I may be most proud of. And then we decide, hey, this is a good book to consider. Let's see. So I'll reach out to the author and say, hey, hopefully they know a little bit about things. They know about the print runs and the hardcovers, and they're expensive. I mean, it's kind of a different world from someone who hasn't been in there, hasn't been in the small press hardcover scene, so to speak. But anyway, so then if I can come to terms with the author of the expectations, and I generally will ask the author straight up, who are your favorite artists? Who do you like to work with? What do you want to see on the cover? And in a lot of times, I trust the author complete with the artist. Sometimes they'll introduce me to an artist I haven't known. And they're like, oh, I really like this guy. And I'm like, okay, if you like him, I'm pretty sure I'll be good with it. So I give a lot of cover ideas right into the author's hands of, hey, this is what I want to see. Certain authors kind of have, and then once you do this process once, if you come back and we do another book, it's I don't want to say easier, but once you've gone through the process once, you kind of know what I'm going to say. I know what they're going to say, and so it's the process is a little bit quicker, a little bit easier. But then once the cover art's done, we lay it out, do some copy edits, put it up for sale. You've mentioned the marketing part. That's a little bit tough. But it used to be social media was such a huge influence on that. And man, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I think a lot of people have gone back to the news, just straight up newsletters is where they're getting their information from, as far as that, because I've noticed my newsletters have grown a lot, and then my social media interaction is, it's like it's dropped some. So that's always one of those things that changes over time. You can just kind of figure out the best way to get the word out there and kind of hope for the best.
So, I mean, I think what you're saying about social media is absolutely right. And particularly this year, a lot of people, especially in the independents and the small press, really have felt the effect of social media being so disparate and there not being a platform that people have universally agreed upon as the dominant one to use. So I think, like you say, people are going back to the old ways and going back to newsletters and even like forums or discords or blogs like Substack. So it's just kind of a case of great uncertainty, but also of experimentation. And for people listening, it's rough, but I think we have to persevere and we have to know that better times are coming because things are cyclical, and we've seen that before with the horror boom and then the fallout when we kind of went back to uncertainty. But I hope that we're gonna have a horror renaissance soon.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. It is a cyclical environment, and with the things going on in social media, even it seems like it's brand new and it's right in everybody's face, and it's so different than it's ever been. But we've gone through these before. We've gone through message board implosions and blog implosions and that sort of thing, where it seems like that was the only way to get the word out, and something new came along and took its place. Hopefully there's something new coming out that kind of gets the community back, everybody back into one group. But I would love to see something like that again. But in the meantime, everybody just got to keep doing what they're doing. If that means using newsletters, if that means um, using different various social media, and just realizing the reach isn't just on one, it's on multiple ones. And I'm not really great at that, but just keep plugging along, and something will come along, and we'll all hop on board on that for a while. One that I would really recommend, especially if you're an author or you're new in conventions, because anything you see online from a social media standpoint is 100 times better in person. And I'm not I'm introverted. I'm not naturally a person who likes large groups, but I just love going to horror conventions. I mean, it's just, if you have the means and the ways to get to one or two a year, I highly recommend that. And people are so welcoming. You would think, oh, I'm new, or what if people don't like me? And it's just not that way. You'll make connections that will last a lifetime. So I know I went a little bit off topic, but that's my recommendation for social media going down the dumps.
And have you found that what's happened with the marketing and social media, has that directly impacted your business? Have you had to make any changes in terms of the number of titles, in terms of the number per print run, or has it been because you've been going since 2008 that you luckily have all these other channels so that the impact has been lesser?
Yeah, that's a very good question, and one of the things that I think has kind of kept me going all these years is being able to make minor adjustments as I'm going. I try to never put myself in a position where I'm locked into a certain methodology or a certain way to do things for an extended period of time. Because if you get locked in, and then things in the market change, or things in just books in general change, you can be stuck. It can be tough to change course without disappointing a lot of people, if especially if you're contractually obliged to meet certain requirements. So I think that's an important factor, is just being able to change, weather the storms when they come up, so to speak. That being said, 2025 and it's actually been a really good year for me. It's kind of surprising. I don't know if this is a self-fulfilling prophecy or not, but over the last several years, even years are not good and odd years are very good. So it's like on an even year, I kind of wade water, and in odd years, I'm swimming. I've always been, I got to break this. I thought I was going to break it last year, and I kind of did. I mean, last year was a good year too, but it seems like I do better on odd years. I don't know why. It's just one of those things that happen. I guess it's almost like a superstition at this point. But I hope that answers that question. But I think 2025, there are certain writings on the wall that it's towards the end of the year. It might be a little bit more difficult. But I think people will. I think you use the right word, persevere. We'll get through it.
Yeah, and I think something that we should make sure that people are absolutely aware of with Thunderstorm is that you publish a huge variety of horror. So when we were talking about the beginnings, people could have perhaps fairly assumed that, okay, it's mostly extreme horror, it's mostly splatterpunk, it's mostly pulp. These were the kind of authors that we're talking about. But actually, you really do publish the gamut of horror literature. And, you've recently put out things by V. Castro. You've also got different lines now. You've got Jeff Strand's Gleefully Macabre. You've got Mary Sangiovanni's Tempest line. So you couldn't really say that you're in a particular subgenre, because you really do go throughout all modes of horror. So, I mean, in terms of when you're looking to put something out, what kind of ratio would you say you have of you selecting things that you gravitate towards, and what is other authors kind of coming to you? And then how do the people who are running these different lines then get to curate their own? So I know that's an awful lot of questions kind of packed into one.
No, that's you're absolutely right. I do a lot of different lines. I do a lot of different subgenres of horror. And you're right. In the beginning, it was a lot of it was directed more to extreme. I kind of agree with that. To start, when I started, I'm sorry, and then as far as your other, we can definitely go into each individual lines if you want to have discussions over what goes into what. When it started, when this was, remember when I said it used to be kind of hardcover first, then paperback, and then that switched and I'm not even quite sure the exact year. But I noticed that a lot of authors were going towards, and this carries on today, but a lot of authors were going towards, even if they were established with paperback publishing houses, they were doing it on their own. So one of the first author-directed lines that I came out with was Brian Smith's Bitter Ale. And the idea behind that, from my perspective, was, hey, I'm a huge Brian Smith fan. I publish a ton of Brian Smith work. He's now going to be publishing his own work under his own umbrella. Wouldn't it be, I mean, for lack of a better word, easier on my end if I said, okay, Brian Smith, I trust you with what you're going to put out. you're putting your own name on it, and I'm already a fan. What if we had a line of books dedicated to that sort of thing? So it started there, and it kind of expanded. You mentioned Jeff Strand. What I've done with I did a Jonathan Jan's line of 11 titles, J.F. Gonzalez line of books, and again, we can go into specifics if you'd like. But I started doing that with various authors that I've already published. Or had an interest in publishing, sort of give them their own leeway, where it was less deadline approach, less me like, hey, where's my book? They can kind of go at their own pace. When the book comes out, I'll do a Thunderstorm type edition with it. And it kind of just made things a lot it made things a lot smoother, and it gave them the option to, try new things and go in new directions and that sort of thing. And I guess it kind of happened as well with Brian Keene's Maelstrom line was kind of the start of that. And then Brian Smith's Bitter Ale was more specific. But I went down that road to kind of open up different channels of ways of, let's have books that look a little bit different than everything else. I don't like everything to look the exact same or to be the exact same. And some of those have ended, and they ran their course. And even if I'm still publishing those specific authors, it might not be under those specific lines. So that was kind of the initiation process of that. And I've kind of adopted things that I learned from those experiences with those author-driven lines. I've adopted them into regular daily operations now. As far as how titles get selected and get put into each one, it's kind of just case by case. Sometimes it's just what feels right. Because there's some books that probably could fit in various. And sometimes it's, I'll work with the author. Hey, what do you think of this idea? I'm a huge art fan. I love the artists that put out these awesome cover art. So I tend to like books with dust jackets on them. Some people don't, but I find those to be more interesting just on a personal level. So those are the ones that I'm kind of, I don't want to say pushing for, but those are the ones that I'm always on the lookout for, of that style of book of making. I don't know. Is that did I answer that question? Okay. I hope I'm not rambling.
No, you did. And I mean, you were talking about we could get into some specifics if we want. And I mean, you were saying that you learned some different things from working on various lines that you then applied to, I guess, for want of better phrasing, the regular line or the regular way of doing things with Thunderstorm. So what were some of those specific lessons?
One of the specifics, and for the most part, this has worked out great. Occasionally it'll burn me, but I run a deadline-free press. There is no absolute deadline for any book. And I realize that I do a lot of reprints, so maybe that isn't as important now. But still, if even if it's a reprint, there's things like maybe the author has other books coming out certain times of the year, and they really want to push it in September and not in October or whatever, right? I'm very flexible in that sort of way. If there's a time that works well for the author based on their other work and other, commitments, I'm going to do my best to make that happen. So that wasn't really, when I first started, it's like, hey, I really need this by February 1st. I got all this stuff lined up for this. If it doesn't work out, then I'm behind and that sort of thing. And I've come to realize that it's on a personal level, it's a lot less stress for me. So I'm assuming it would be for the other creatives, or the creatives. I'm not the creative, but the artists and the authors to work like that. That doesn't mean it's unlimited, but it's like, hey, if it needs to be in this month or this time of the year or this, I can definitely kind of have a flexible schedule. Another thing I've learned is that when the whole timing thing of it feels like when you're first starting, or even when you've done 100 books, it feels like from a scheduling standpoint, any blips in it feel like they're huge, earth-shattering things, and it really isn't if you have good backup plans, good other techniques, other ways to make things happen. And a lot of that stuff goes on behind the scenes. It's not out in the public, because I generally don't announce things until they're close to release. And or if I'm doing a pre-order type thing. I mean, there's kind of two different variations, but so that's another one. Like, hey, wait till the book is ready before you release it. That relieves all the pressure, right? If I told you tomorrow, hey, I got a book announcement, this book is coming out in 2 weeks or 3 weeks, and I deliver it in 2 weeks, book buyers, the public, everybody's going to think, hey, that was smooth, that was quick, that was easy, there was no issues with that. It could have been sitting on my desk for 6 months. It could have been sitting on my desk for 3 months. It could have been a smoothest book I've ever made, no issues at all. Or it could have had bumps along the road the entire way until I said, hey, it comes out in 3 weeks. So doing things like that, where you wait, you don't have to go out there and announce everything right away. That kind of helps along the lines. And there's some math along that too. I've always said, and this may be more towards other publishers or people interested in publishing, but 90% of what you do should go fairly smoothly. I'm not saying there won't be challenges. I'm saying it should be enjoyable. All the parties should be happy with how it's going, how it happened, the end result. 90% of your time should be well spent towards that. The remaining 10%, 90% of that remaining, you're going to have to learn how to deal with issues, how to mend bridges, I screwed up, apologize, figure out ways. This wasn't a smooth process, but the end result, hopefully you're still there. And then that leaves 1% left, right? You got 90% great, 90% you overcoming things, and then you can have 1% left. And this one's a hard one for people to deal with, where you just screw up so badly that apologies aren't going to fix it. It's just you messed up, and you have to be able to get over that, or do what you can to rectify it as much as possible, in order to, keep going, and do the next one. The ones that are tough, learn from those mistakes, that sort of thing. I think I went off topic again. I'm sorry, but
no, I think it's very useful advice that I think is going to be applicable just not just to other publishers, but kind of to life in general. I mean, it kind of is similar to this idea of under promising and over delivering. If you kind of do that, then you're gonna do okay. But it's when Yeah, when you kind of overpromise and then underdeliver, that's when you're gonna upset people. And you know, a lot of, well, maybe not a lot, but a number of people, what they'll do is they'll take pre-orders very, very far in advance when they haven't really got anything beyond the contract signed. They probably don't even have the manuscript, and they're playing a dangerous game because they're essentially looking at the pre-orders to some point funding the endeavor. That is very,
Right.
very risky, and this is why we see, unfortunately, a not inconsiderable amount, a number of presses folding and owing a lot of people money because they took money to fund things. They fucked up. They didn't have a backup plan. It's exactly the opposite of what you've said you do and what I try to do, which is to say, look, whatever I'm putting into the publishing, this is my money. This is my bet. It is a little bit like a bet, but you can be calculated with it. But at the end of the day, if I lose it, then I lose. But if you're saying if it loses, then actually the customers and the authors, oh no, no, do not do
No,
that. Yeah.
no, and yeah, you're absolutely right. You have to have the money aspect to the business, because it is a business, is to just treat it as a business. You can have drinks with authors, you can be friends with authors, but I mean, at the end of the day, people get upset when they don't get paid. I mean, that's life. I mean, I get upset when I don't get paid. I mean, so having the money, just, keeping that on the forefront, and you got to you also have to put yourself in their position, right? I mean, you can't just shrug your shoulders. I mean, people count on money. If I tell somebody I'm going to pay them on the first and I don't, and then now their rent is late and they're having to deal with a landlord thing, and then, it just, it can, I don't know. I try to be a nice guy, but it's just like those sort of issues that you just described will irritate me, because I really dislike it when you know when I hear about presses that aren't paying. They should know better. So, and there's tips and ways to do that, because if you're right, if you put up something too early for pre-order, you kind of got to remember or keep it in a separate account of, hey, this goes towards this. People have already paid for this book, so now you're on the hook for the printing bill of it, right? So if that gets too far out in advance and you need to put up another book to pay that last book's printing bill, it spirals pretty quick. I don't know if you guys have seen the movie Margin Call, where the guy figures out the calculator. It's about the housing crisis, basically, but he goes, yeah, once we get on the wrong end of this, it's going to go bad. And that was kind of the whole premise of the movie. So I kind of, that's what happens. It doesn't take a lot. Once you're on the wrong side of it, it's really, really hard to catch up. One of the other things that I mentioned, you're talking about just finances in general, is, I don't know if you guys saw a movie called, I think it was called War Dogs or something like that. Basically, is about these arms dealers, right? And so they figure out that they can save millions of dollars if they package their bullets in plastic rather than on wood. So they go and do this thing, and they're going to save millions of dollars, but this is kind of a legal activity, though, right? They're going to save millions of dollars, and then they don't pay the people that put the bullets in the plastic. And the guy gets upset because he didn't get paid, and he just saved the millions, and it brought down the whole thing. And it's just like, that's some of the stuff I see. It's the same thing. It's like, I mean, I don't know. It's a little bit aggravating. It's just pay people. I don't know. We could. I don't know. That's probably something that I don't know. I feel really, really bad. I've had it happen just on accident, pure accident. That someone says, "Hey, are you gonna?" I'm waiting for my payment. I'm like, "Wait, what?" Huh? And then I'll go back in my computer and I'm like, I'll be looking for it, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I am so sorry. I just flew over my head. Totally stupid. So it's like when it happens, I feel terrible. So I can't imagine going through life and it's happening all the time. You have people knocking at your door for payment. I couldn't live like that. I don't know how other people do. I really don't.
That's the thing that scares me more than anything else. When you see it on social media, there's two things that will bug the shit out of me. And as a writer, who's someone who does this, if you got money problems and you can't pay your authors, or you say something stupid, and then when you could sit there and you can, if you say something stupid and you don't have a good reason for saying something stupid, or you don't apologize for it if you're in the wrong, chances are there's probably some money problems there too. And so it's like, you want to nuke your publishing company from orbit.
Right.
People talk, people say things, they talk behind their backs. When you don't pay, people find out, and it's sad. But you'll eventually be like, well, I used to be a book publisher, but now I'm a prison guard. You're just doing something. Now I'm something else. I'm not even involved in the publishing anything. I don't even have a Facebook anymore because somebody might actually find me. But yeah, that's some scary shit.
No, that's a very, very good point. And the other one is, if something goes awry or something, just like you said, say, hey man, I fucked up. This is how I plan on fixing it. That's all you have to do. You don't have to come up with a sob story about your entire life. I fucked up. This is how I'm going to fix it.
There you go.
That's it.
So, I mean, we've been talking about numbers and logistics. So I'm wondering, how do you choose the print run number for each title? And what is the most that a print run has ever been? And what is the least that it has ever been?
That's a very good question. So for determining print runs for either newer authors or authors that may not have a huge collectible following, I just kind of take an average of where the market is, and it's kind of what it is. And look, I think it's low. I mean, I want to sell more books, but sometimes the market dictates how many you can sell. Now that's currently probably around between 40 and 50, somewhere in there. But now remember, and it seems like, oh, that's tiny, and it is tiny. So again, $100 book. So if you're newer or just entering the collecting scene, that's a good accomplishment, and hopefully fans and book buyers like it. I always like to say I like to provide something to authors that they can show off to their families or put on their bookshelves. It's a little bit different than just showing something on a Kindle. So that's kind of where we're at now, as far as like the kind of the base. I do sometimes I'll do numbers based on pre-order. So if I think a book is going to do well, I want to get as many orders as possible. I'll extend out and do. Let's see how many sell pre-orders. Currently, like Philip Fracassi's For to Die For is on a pre-order. I'm going to base the print run on that. So that's kind of a good technique that doesn't that I seem to use well, and it kind of helps the company out. So I've done that in the past. So my highest selling book would be I think the Joe R. Lansdale Horde Drive-In anthology that Brian Keene and Christopher Golden put together was 350. That might be my highest. I know Maelstrom 4 was 333. I did a couple Maelstroms at around 300. I think Four to Die For by Philip Fracassi, that's probably, it might hit 300 as well. So it's somewhere around in the 300 range. As far as the smallest print run, I've done a couple, variations. Like I've done a lettered variation of a limited, which would be like 10, 15 copies. But just a standalone on its own, when I came up with J.F. Gonzalez's Dark Worlds line, I think the first one was Fetish. I think I did 18 copies of Fetish. We were trying some new techniques, and we had a bunch of plans for that. So that kind of, I don't want to say it was unfinished, but it was supposed to be something. It was going to grow into something different. But maybe 15, 18, I've done a couple like that. I kind of intermix them, do small print runs, do larger print runs, kind of a little bit of each.
Yeah, and in terms of the Fracassi book, For to Die For, that is a collection of novellas, no prizes for guessing how many, given the title. But, I mean, that is something that is almost a sweet spot for hardcover limited edition books, because you can put novellas together, so you've got this like brand new collectible that it's never been put together in this way. So I mean, what do you think is the balance between putting out like standalone novels and then putting out these collections of shorter works?
Yeah, I like doing both. One of my favorites is the 4 novella collection. I mean, and Stephen King has had several of those over his career. The different seasons and 4 Past Sunset, that sort of thing. I personally love those, and there's for a couple of reasons. One is you get 4 different things. 4 parts, and so even if one isn't to your taste, maybe the other 3 are. And then having them all grouped as one is then you get this nice thick regular size. Well, I call it regular size, but a regular size horror book of 900,000 or 90,000 words, something like that, 80,000 words. So I love them. And the Fracassi one is going to have a new one in it, a new novella he just wrote, and in 3 reprints. So that's another, helpful marketing tip. And the other nice thing about this Fracassi, this is going to be my 500th book. That's going to be number 500 for the course of the press, which is, I never imagined I'd be here 500 books in. So that's kind of awesome too. So I really like those. I really like normal size novels too, or even thick novels or larger novels. And then of course I've done like series of books too that maybe the whole story is longer than the just one novel. Like one of my favorite all-time things is Brian Keene's Lost Level. I mean, I was so proud to publish that book because I think that expanded his career. I mean, we were talking about extreme, and then now you got all these other subgenres. When he came out with that, was like, wow, because it's more of an adventure than anything. But so the size. I like all different variational sizes, but when you get to the smaller ones, like just a standalone novella or even a standalone chapbook, if it's in hardcover, it's weird. It's kind of counterintuitive that those things are just as pretty close as expensive to make as a regular size book. And the reason is on a paperback, the majority of the cost is based on the number of pages, right? Because you got pages and a cover and glue, right? So the number of pages is going to be a huge factor in the price. But on hardcovers, that's not necessarily true because you have the type of materials, the type of end sheets, the stamping mechanisms, and all these variations. So the page count doesn't have the same impact. So a 100-page novella is not that much cheaper to print than a 300-page novel. There is a difference. There is a difference in price. I'm not saying there doesn't exist. I'm saying it's a lot less. So I would prefer to put 4 novellas together and sell it that way than an individual novella. But I've done them. I mean, I did Edward Lee and Mary San Giovanni's Strange Stones. That one was a little bit shorter, but I did it same oversized because the Vincent Chong artwork was just, I have to do this as a regular size book. So there's always exceptions to every rule. I mean, and that's kind of the fun part of it. But I've also done little chapbooks too of, it's a little 5x8 chapbook, 100 pages. Sometimes those are cool too.
Yeah, Vincent Young is probably my favorite cover artist. And I mean, when I'm putting out my own books, whether independently or with another press, I really try to get involved in the art, or at least to say, this is the artist that I want to work with. And I guess this kind of comes back to, making decisions in terms of when you're an indie as to what you are prepared to compromise and what you're not prepared to compromise on. But I mean, for me, the cover art always has to look amazing. That is a non-negotiable. And I've said, if I'm going to put something out with a small press, when you have it on your bookshelf, it has to look identical to traditional press, or in some cases even better, because I wouldn't want you to think, okay, this is kind of lesser. That's a non-negotiable for me. So yeah, Vincent Young.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, because your name is going on it and my company name is going on it. Why wouldn't you want to put out the best product you possibly can? And so, sometimes things happen and just hit or miss. It's kind of weird. I look back through my gallery and it's like, oh man, I love 99.9%, but some of them I was like, what was I thinking? That doesn't. And then other ones, though, is like kind of like, oh, that's okay. And then I look back on it and I go, man, that really speaks to me now. It speaks to me more than when I actually did it. So, but you're absolutely right. From the get-go, you want to try to put that effort in because your name's on it. And if you're working with a publisher, their name's on it. And so why not put in that extra effort?
Well, thank you so much for joining us this evening to talk about all things horror and publishing and books. I wonder, where can our readers and listeners connect with you? Or where can
Well,
our viewers and listeners?
Well, thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure. I've really enjoyed this evening talking to both of you. It's been great. You can find me if you want to order any books. Go to www.thunderstormbooks.com. So that's my website. Social media wise, I'm pretty much kind of on Blue Sky. It's kind of the one I'm kind of hanging out on now. Technically, I still have a Twitter account, but I really don't go there often. So the direct website is probably the best spot to catch me. And then I'll be on the lookout for the next big thing, and whatever that is, what you're going to call it, social media or whatever. We'll see what happens, right? But for now, those are the two best spots to find me. And at horror conventions. Hopefully I get to see a lot of you guys in person. Bob, I'm going to probably see you in about 6 weeks, right? At KillerCon?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I'll be at KillerCon. We're going to have a good time.
So anybody out there that's going to go to KillerCon, I'm very approachable, especially if there's a beer involved.
All right. Well, do you have any final thoughts for our listeners? And this could be final thoughts in general. This could be about horror. This could be for people looking to put out their first hardback book. So whatever is on your mind.
Yeah. I mean, if you're out there, if you're just starting writing or you're starting down this road, just remember to enjoy the experience. Sometimes we're faced with obstacles that we didn't expect, but if you take time to enjoy it, and it's life is a great thing when you take the time to just look around and be grateful for all the good things too. The internet is full of all the trash and everything bad that's going on, and there's no denying there's a bunch of garbage going on. But just remember to stop and smell the roses too, because there's a lot of good stuff out there. So that's horror books, that's book collecting, that's small press horror, but that's life in general as well. I think that those are my final words.
All right. Thank you again. Thank you so much for joining us.